Good evening, everyone. My name is Barkha Dutt, and I am on the road with the pandemic again. This was most of my life and my team's life through 2020, and it is heartbreaking to me that it literally feels like yesterday once more in so many ways. And the horrible part is, it feels much worse than 2020. It's worse in so many different ways. It's worse because here on the ground, one doctor at the front line of the COVID battle said to me, I'm in Mumbai right now, Maharashtra is sinking. Maharashtra, of course, is not the only state battling COVID. In hospital after hospital, and we've been bringing you those ground reports, oxygen is running short. 1 hour from this city, 8 people died in a single hospital as oxygen ran out. But critical drugs, remdesivir, including tocilizumab, these are the two drugs that doctors use to treat patients. The hospitals we've been visiting, doctors say it's totally out of supply. Beds, of course, are in short supply. Maharashtra has already used more oxygen than it can produce. It now needs to borrow oxygen from other states. And alongside this, of course, as the state imposes new restrictions, curfew like, lockdown like restrictions without calling it a lockdown, is the fear of what this will do to the poor, to the economy, to the ravaged, to our migrant workers. And for me personally, who spent a big part of the last year reporting the biggest exodus of human beings that India has witnessed since partition, this was really a horrible sense of deja vu. Let me tell you a little bit about where I'm sitting. Behind me is a ticket counter where migrant worker after migrant worker has been coming to purchase tickets to take a train back to their villages. The only saving grace is that they're not having to walk this time, the trains are still running. But the workers we interviewed are still buying tickets in black, not at the counter, which you see behind me, quite empty right now because the day has ended. But through the day today, there's been man after man lining up here to purchase a ticket. And this is the scene at the main Lokmanya terminus in Mumbai as the workers leave and they leave and they leave. And like I said, the only relief is that they're not walking 1,000 kilometers back home. But as I spoke to them, and we'll play out that report for you, I was particularly struck by what one worker said to me. I said, why are you going? Wait till the end of the month. There isn't a lockdown. And he said in 2020, they said to us, कि lockdown एक दिन का होगा और फिर 3 महीने चला. We don't feel like we can necessarily believe or predict what's going to happen. We want to be home. Anyway, we're not getting enough work. We're not earning. Remember, most of these workers are daily wages, and that line just goes on. That line just goes on. You could see it there, and those were just some glimpses. And we'll play out the report of what happened when we spoke to those workers. But what we really want to ask today is, have we learned the lessons of 2020? Mass congregations have still not been called off. The Vaishno Devi Yatra is on. The Kumbh Mela was, of course, on. The election rallies have not been stopped. A doctor I met in an ICU ward today folded her hands and she said to me, I beg all of you, can you all stop this, please? I think we're still underestimating what we are going through. You need to come to these hospitals to see what doctors are actually going through. And I think we need to understand responsibility reporting exactly what I'm seeing on the ground. And let me introduce at this point our panelists on the program today. I'm seeing on the screen Dr. Ishwar Gilada, an infectious diseases expert. Welcome to the show, sir. We're also joined on the program by Madhavan Narayanan, well-known journalist and editor. We're joined also by one of Mumbai's best-known doctors at the front line of the COVID battle, Dr. Jalil Parkar from Lilavati Hospital. Namrata Zakaria, whom we of course know as one of the city's best-known columnists. Welcome. Sandip Ghose, well-known commentator, is with us. And finally, someone who has just written a book on the history of pandemics and how migrant workers respond to them. The foremost authority on migrant labor is Chinmay Tumbe, author and commentator. Welcome all of you. I want to start with the doctors, and again I want to say that I know it is our job as journalists to contribute to the sense of calm, to contribute to a sense, as it were, of well-being. But given what I'm seeing on the ground here today, I have to sound the warning that we haven't even begun to see anything yet. Doctor after doctor after doctor is saying oxygen, not enough. Remdesivir, whether you agree with its use or not enough. Toxizumab, not available. Beds running short, and children, 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds are now getting this. Dr. Parker, I want to start with you if I may. Tell us a little bit about how bad it is and how it makes you feel as a doctor when you're seeing that mass congregations are still carrying on, whether in the form of election rallies or pilgrimages. Are people not understanding what's actually going on?
Barkha, I don't know where to start and where to end. It is very pathetic to see this stream of humanity going back home, picking up their small belongings, trying to get in the black market. If you come to the hospitals and if you visit the various hospitals, it's such a sorry state of affairs that I don't know how to express myself. And I feel deeply hurt because I myself was a victim of COVID where I had difficulty even to get into the hospital, though I was from the same hospital because there were no beds. Uh, I think the same applies to each and every citizen of this country who is a victim of COVID 19. If you come to our hospital, I think our hospital is doing its best. There's no doubt about it. Though the pressures are there, I think the system is collapsing, and I think it has already collapsed. If I may say so, very unfortunate, but that's the stark reality. People keep on talking as to why we are admitting patients in the lobby of a hospital, which was in Lilavati on the 8th floor. Where would the patient go? Because when the patient keeps on calling from various corners of the city and the suburbs and the extended suburbs, trying to get a bed, whether they are in Kalyan, whether they are in Ulhasnagar, Kandivali, Borivali, Khar, Santa Cruz, right up till town until Nariman Point. So when they keep on attempting, they are so scared that they might collapse on the way. And when they come to our hospital, we can't just push them out either. So what do? We have temporarily given them all the possible treatment on the chairs, on the wheelchair, in the triage, where we have created beds, uh, and then we move on when the beds are made available on the floors, whether it is the COVID ICU or it is the COVID wards. I think it is very inhuman, and we all have to fight this COVID 19. It's a desperate situation. And please don't tell me that, this will get over in a month's time, this will get over. It's not so, it's more than a year. We started on somewhere around 23rd of March last year, and today we are in the month of April. Uh, how long can we sustain? It's not a blame game. We all weren't prepared for it. Maybe we did not even know what was the type of treatment which we should give. Everybody started from, God knows, from SCQs to azithromycins to ivermectin to doxycyclines to plasma, remdesivir, tocilizumab, and steroids, um, blood thinners, but nobody till today knows what really works. One day you read in the papers, WHO has said this. The other day you hear that in US the CDC has said so. Then you have the European Union, and then back to square one again. The fear psychosis is so much, and we all are to be blamed, including my fraternity, including yours. Take it with a pinch of salt. I would say the thinkers, the all the government officials, bureaucrats, everybody. The fear psychosis is so much that the patients initially did not want to come to the hospital because they thought it was a death knell. Anyhow, the poor got affected first because it was the sheer closeted population. After that, the ones who were closeted in those high-rise buildings, the affluents, the ones in the upper middle class, lower middle class, etc. They did avoid coming to hospitals, and they thought by non-exposure they will get away with COVID. But I would like everybody to know that we all are going to be affected with COVID someday or the other. If not today, tomorrow. The senior citizens have been locked up in their houses for nearly a year because the children told them, if you go out, you'll get COVID. But what has happened? Now, everybody from the high rises, the affluents are also coming in. You see, in my hospital, whether it is the poor guy or whether it is a rich guy, they are next to each other on each and every bed. So we all have to see to it that we have to come together and see how to get over it. Let all the differences go away. We are talking about the shortage of remdesivir. We are talking about the shortage of tocilizumab, which are life-saving drugs. There's shortage of BiPAP machines. There's shortage of oxygen, oxygen concentrators, ventilators, uh, and vaccines, of course, and also the testing that has been off for the last, I think, week or so, because we are not getting the reports for 4 to 5 days. So what do we do? Are we supposed to treat the patient for COVID, or are we not supposed to treat the patient for COVID? Because if the report comes false negative, we will be blamed as to why we have started the treatment for COVID. So, where is the end? Please, for God's sake, let everybody get vaccinated, and for God's sake, let us have all the facilities in its full force to see to it that we get remdesivir, we get tocilizumab. Well, plasma hasn't worked. There was an issue about plasma a long time back. But these medications need to be there. If they are not there, we have already collapsed. And let me tell you, we are all tired, literally tired. The nurses, every day we meet, they say, when is this going to get over? The technicians say so. The security staff says so. The nursing attendants say so. My own colleagues have become ill. My postgraduate students who are giving their life day in and day out because there's shortage of doctors. I mean, they have also got COVID. So what are we supposed to do? Please, for God's sake, this is a wake-up call, and let's all get up. And I'm begging all of you all to stop all this nonsense and see to it that we save lives. It is very unfortunate, very humiliating. We are not animals, we are human beings. Please don't enchain the human beings. You can't change them for a year, you can't change them for 2 years by naming something that, well, it's not a lockdown, it's a lockdown, it's not a lockdown. Forget about all those. Let us give them what we can give for them to survive. Please, for God's sake, I'm begging with folded hands on your channel so that everybody hears this loud and clear. What wrong have we done? When we admit patients, if my hospital management thinks that we should admit patients if they have admitted in the lobby, what wrong have we done? Have we admitted them in a bloody toilet or something? We are treating them, we are giving them oxygen, we are giving them medication, we are giving them nurses. What more can we do? I can understand. You can't tell me that if my building has got 10 stories and I need another 5 stories, where will the hospital bring it from? So we all have to stop all this, the blame game, pointing fingers, sitting behind laptops, sitting behind this thing. Come to the ground. Come to the ground realities. Come, please, for God's sake, come and fight the battle with us. Then you'll realize what it is. Do you know what it is to wear 2 to 3 PPE masks? You can't even breathe. I never used to drink tea, and I have to drink tea no sooner I come out because I can't think. You wear a mask, 3 masks, 2 masks, then you wear a shield, and then you wear that bloody PPE kit. What the hell is going on? What are you all talking? The nurses cannot go to the toilet, they cannot pee, they cannot drink water, they cannot even have their meal or a sandwich for 8 hours. What are we talking about? It's very unfortunate. The health system has collapsed. I am not blaming anybody. I am sure the police is tired and they are fed up. I have treated many policemen in our hospital who have got COVID. Not only the what do you call? Not only just the officers, even the ones who are in the lower ranks. We have treated fire brigade personnel. We have treated all the health workers. You should see the way my own colleagues who are in the hospital with whom we smile every day, they are so fed up and they plead for a bed. There is no bed. But don't blame. Stop this blame game. Let us come together and let me tell you, this is not going to end. It is going to go on for this year and maybe it might continue to the next year. What will a doctor do if there's no oxygen? What is he going to do? He's going to be bashed up by the relatives. What reply will he give? Have you seen a patient dying? Have you seen the patient dying left, right, and center? And you are helpless. You feel helpless. You feel handicapped. Our mindset, we are really tired mentally. I can't attend phone calls because I don't know what to do. Because I can't give beds. There are no beds. Where will I get it from? The doctors who are on duty, where we do the screening and when we want to send the patient to the wards, they just cannot give us a bed. And we have to attend 100, calls. It's really inhuman. At night, I put down my ringtone, but yet in my mind that ringtone keeps on ringing, and I don't know whether it is whether there's actually a call from the emergency or there is no call. Come on, man. What are we doing? You want to have managers, you want to have, what should I say, uh, dharnas, you want to have political mileage. For God's sake, I'm tired. I'm tired of saying this again and again. I feel every day now, since the last maybe a month or so, I feel that I'm going to get COVID once again. What should I do? Should I stop treating? Should I go somewhere? Should I take a leave of 5 days, 10 days, 15 days? We doctors always discuss this that let's take a break. But we take a break and go where? And when we come back, we again have to get into the same rut. I'm begging all of y'all with folded hands. And you might say I'm too emotional on television. No, I'm not emotional. I'm not that emotional, but I have become frustrated now. Frustrated to an extent that I don't know whom to ask for what. You can't bring out, laws which is going to affect the economy. The economy is getting affected. Can you imagine? And I'm asking all of y'all and all those who are going to watch. Tell me one thing: is this America? Does anyone go at 5:30 to have dinner? Now, if you have a small restaurant, you have 4 or 5 tables, you close down that restaurant at 8 o'clock. He has a rental to pay, which might be from 1.5 lakhs to 5 lakhs, depending, or 10 lakhs, depending on how fine dining it is. Where are they going to recover that money from? There are people in the chefs in the kitchen, the helps in the kitchen, the waiters. Who's going to pay them? And eventually they go back to their villages. And what is going to happen? What is going to happen is crime is going to increase. We all have to understand this, including us. We have to wear masks. And this crime, if it increases, God bless us. And it is happening. It is such a plight. I had a security guard of mine who was not keeping well. We got his RT-PCR done. We have still not got the report, but I've started the treatment at my own risk. Where will he go? And there are how many like that? You don't want maids to come. You don't want helps to come. You don't want dudwala to come. Grocery wala aana nahi chahiye. Say, the societies will have their own rules and regulations. I mean, there has to be some system. The protocols need to be placed. You see America, you see the European Union. They have their protocols in place, yet they had a collapse. So we are bound to, because our population is such, we are bound to. It's not. It's not that government does not want to do, because now what has happened is that the governments don't know what to do. So it is we citizens who have to collectively come together and do something and see to it that we help the government to tide over this crisis.
I just
I heard the other day, I heard that it is taking four days for cremation. Can you imagine that? What are we?
yeah, doctor. I always think that I'm strong enough to have surgical like detachment when I report news, but I can't control myself listening to you. It has been so disturbing because you've spoken from the heart, and I actually thank you for your emotion, because I think we've all pretending that this is about data and numbers and not about people, and that it's not about real families, and it's not about real loss, and it's not about deaths. There are 5-year-old children in hospital, and one has to see it to believe it. And I'm grateful to you for that emotion. But I'm also very grateful that you made the point that doctors are being judged. I'm so sick and tired of these videos from hospitals that show two patients to a bed of people lying on cardboard strips. Where are they meant to go? There are no beds. Madhavan, I think the most war hardy of us, battle hardy of us, I used to think of myself as one of those. You listen to Jalil speaking and you cannot control, at least I can't control my
Exactly.
emotion right now. Madhavan, go ahead.
Barkha, that's exactly what I was coming to, Barkha. First of all, let me pick with what you start with what you said. You said the journalists try to be calm, and maybe their job is to calm people. I disagree, because journalists, even in normal terms, we are supposed to, the ones who are interested in public interest, are supposed to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And maybe this is one such moment. We have to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. And Dr. Parker's speech, in my opinion, with some minor corrections, should have been made by the Prime Minister. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
Instead of
yeah,
talking him about the doctor in first person as Dr. Parker has done, he should have been a doctor in third person. With we did uh, begin by thanking and lighting candles last year to thank the health workers, and it's as if we did the opposite after that. So let's be very clear on who should we be thankful for. The other thing is that as a journalist, some of us we tend to go all around the place in so-called analysis. So I tried to sum it up today. I had a talk with your colleague Ashish, and I said that we probably have to look at 5 E's. Everybody's talking about 5 T's: it tracking, tasting, no, treating and testing and treatment, all that. But that is sort of an administrative measure. It is now stopping short of community transmission now, right, instead of the second wave. So we have to look at what I call the 5 E's. And the 5 E's, as I see, are emergency measures. We do have a Public Emergency Act in India. We also have the Epidemiology Act of 1897. And strangely enough, unlike many of those laws which we threw out saying they were outdated, this seems to have been more relevant than ever before, where a British style or a colonial or, God forgive, I might even use the word authoritarian administration may be necessary right now given the situation. But authoritarian administration works only when there is moral authority, which means people are inclined to take hardline measures and follow them in good faith. And it cannot be when you have events like Kumbh Mela going or not, with we have 100 pilgrims and 20 seers testing positive. So that brings me to the next E, which is education. Now, education has two levels, which is the expert education and general education. The general education will be on social, distancing and masks, and that has been grossly flouted. We've been reading about a Nobel Prize winning effect economist called Peltzman, who said that when seat belts are, recommended or built into cars, then people tend to do risky driving. That's what we seem to have done as a country. That because we thought that we were manufacturing vaccines for the world, we think the epidemic has ended. So the education part of it has two dimensions. The more serious dimension of education is We have to separate the new strains and see whether they are really lethal or whether they are less or not. So that's the expert's job. That's E for expertise. Let them do that. But while they do that, we have to, not stop COVID appropriate behavior. But that cannot be done purely by, uh, it seems, what we did last year, because we seem to have missed the ball. In the hare and tortoise race, we were, for the 6 months, we were the hare in the tortoise in this business. Then we started sleeping like we were hares. So the stock market started booming, workers came back to work. And therefore, we need the third E, which is the evangelization part, which is what actually Dr. Parker did excellently today, which is that, this is what we needed. It's a very Churchillian speech, if I may say so, comparing it to a World War II situation where Churchill said, I have come to give you blood, sweat, toil, and tears. So Dr. Parker's speech can be simply, in fact, I would like Mojo Story to edit it into a smaller version, maybe 10 minutes, and run it on WhatsApp. This is one opportunity for you to do the right things on WhatsApp instead of spreading fake news. Okay. So that the evangelization part is the third E. The fourth is where we seem to be sort of, having a real issue, which is enforcement. If emergency measures are employed, such as a lockdown, people are already talking about economy as a problem. Honestly, as a business journalist, as a financial journalist, I do not think that is an excuse. A public health emergency is where you need community help as well as social efforts, uh, and not you cannot be doing business as usual kind of economics now. For instance, there can be nationally, apart from the reduction of interest rates that has been done, the typical RBI kind of measures, we could take some extraordinary economic measures, like Dr. Parker talked about, small shops being kept open. Allow some sort of special privileges, a total GST exemption, or something like that. Inflation is the least thing we have to worry about now, and the world understands. This is the world that has seen the Marshall Plan after World War II to rebuild the
Yeah, yeah,
economy.
yeah.
So I disagree with my fellow economic journalists and so-called economists, PhDs, who do not understand that when in a public health emergency, you cannot miss the wood for the trees.
I
Okay?
also just want to say that you're right that we've been so busy trying to project control that we have not managed to convey how bad it is. And Dr. Parker, I bow to you for stirring the pain in us that we have been too scared or think of ourselves as too tough. At least I often think of myself as too tough to show pain. uh, but I just came from an ICU hospital where a doctor told me Maharashtra is sinking. Dr. Parker, is Maharashtra sinking? Is all of
Yes,
and it won't end
it's
with
not.
Maharashtra, will it?
It's not just Maharashtra. I think many of the states are sinking. We are trying to cover up. You ask the people, you ask the frontline workers, everybody says that everywhere there is nothing but, what should I say, uh, disaster, disaster, and disaster. Nowhere, nowhere there is a smile. You understand the impact that it is going to have on the children who have not gone to school for 1 year. They're never going to forget, and they're going to tell their stories when they grow up and when they have children. You ask all the shopkeepers. I'm not talking about the what do you call the huge corporate sectors. I'm talking about the small shopkeeper. Where is he going to return the money which the for the things that he have taken from on credit? I have a friend of mine who sells what do you call ready-made garments for females. He doesn't. He for 6 months he paid his workers. He had small shops in the malls, etc. Now, where is he going to pay all that money from? I mean, everything is on credit. The factory has to churn, but here there is no churning. There is only spokes and spokes and spokes. You'll find people committing suicide. What else can they do?
I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about what we can do instead. Sandeep, Madhavan, I'll come back to you. I'll just go around the panel once. Sandeep, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think I must, once again thank Dr. Parker for, apart from all that he has said, for taking a very non-judgmental, non-political stand. I think I'll totally support what he's saying. We need to keep politics aside, come together as a country, as a nation, as people, to see how we move forward. And we have to leave pontification aside at one level. I'm appalled to see, one thing is talking about the Kumbh and the, Vaishno Devi trip, but people are today pontificating whether it was hyper nationalism which has caused this, etc. It's those time will come later on for us to analyze. Equally, all of us should resist the temptation to act as experts and let the experts do their jobs. And all of us need to see how we really can help and contribute in this situation, whether, as Madhavan was saying, acting as evangelists or educating people, getting the right sense. Those of us who are fortunate enough to have more exposure, more education, etc., we need to bring in the right senses in people. That is what we have to do. On the economic front,
Sandeep, can I ask you something before you talk about the economics? We have still not cancelled our mass congregations. I do not know what it will take us. What will
no,
it take
mass
us to stop this?
No,
You
definitely
just saw
that is.
those yatras,
Yeah,
whether it's the farmers' protests, whether it's the yatras, whether it's the Kumbh Mela, whether it's the election rallies. What is this nonsense?
I'm not discounting them at all, Barkha. But if you see what is happening in Bombay today, let us not therefore let us articulate or raise those points separately. But Bombay is today, as you are saying, sinking. Maharashtra is sinking, and that's not sinking because of the Haridwar Kumbh. They have their own issue. I'm
I
not.
want to tell you, sorry, I just want to come in there. Dr. Shahid Jameel was on this program yesterday, and he said the impact of Bengal will be felt 1 month from now. We will
Sure,
not
I
be exempt
totally
from the
agree.
impact
No,
of Bengal.
I'm not
I
trying
mean, the
about.
rallies. Yeah.
I'm not moving away from any of those. But at the same time, what's happening, we need to tackle, because you cannot afford to say, instead of getting deflected on those issues. And the tragedy is, apart from everything else said, the learnings which we are talking about, I'm not talking of just the medical learnings, but there were a lot of learnings last year about how to manage this situation, whether it is the migrant workers issue, or we had talked about there should be urban housing for these migrant workers so that they can be taken care of. They have a place, shelters, etc., to stay and taken care of, rather than returning to. None of those things, I think, none of our states, and that's a huge governance failure. And government has failed, businesses have failed. Everybody got back to what Madhavan was saying, business as usual. And I think that's a fatal thing, and that's something we must really, pull up the government and make them to think about it. Next, and the economic front, this time will require totally different solution. Last time we could have pussyfooted about how much money to inject, put into people's hand, whether you have to have, those kind of subsidies, or how you really take. I think this is the time when I think we'll have to forget about what's happening to the economy. This is a national crisis. The nation itself may have to go through a trough. It's all of us have to share the pain. You cannot minimize the pain. Now is the time really to look after people. And we don't, the mistake we shouldn't make, as Dr. Parker was also saying, today it's Bombay. The way it's spreading, and we are talking about Bengal, but what prevents, and today if you read, UP is in shambles. UP is having the same issues of, crematoriums full, no wood, nothing. So it can just spread like wildfire, which we had not anticipated. Rightly, none of us had anticipated even a month ago when we were commemorating the 1 year of lockdown, etc. So the situation has changed. It's just like an enemy country attacking you. And a public health emergency is nothing short of, a national crisis. It's also
but we have to first act like it's a crisis. Sandeep,
that is what I'm saying, and that is
act like it's a national crisis, or carry on with stupid election rallies or anything else. Farmer protest, any mass congregation has to be got rid of at this point.
That is there, but we are still getting into this issue about there is PR campaign going on to say Uddhav Thackeray is the best CM. One side is saying, and other people are saying it's happened because of Uddhav Thackeray. So that's why Uddhav Thackeray doesn't want to call it a lockdown. And so I think
we give a shit about these politics. I just want
we have to get out of it. That's why. Yes. That is the importance of this program. and we must do it. People like we are speaking up here, instead of going round the circle, making all kind of issues. I think we now need to go directly into the core, and everybody needs to do their
I,
job.
I, I just want to get Chinmay in because there are lessons to be learned, not just from 2020, but from history. And Chinmay, the last time we were talking, you spoke about how, the British ran the trains during the big Spanish flu pandemic. Well, we're running the trains this time, and the migrants are leaving again. And the migrants are not convinced that this is a short lockdown. I'll play out that interview later in the program. What are we learning correctly from history, and what do we still need to learn that we haven't learned?
Yeah, I think the first part is that, unlike last year, we're not shutting down the railways. I think that's a good thing because last year you covered the migrant crisis. It was quite a national calamity. I think, what we learned from past pandemics in particular is that there are two kinds of lockdowns. There's a lockdown which is mandated by the government, but there is also a lockdown which is mandated by the people when things go completely out of hand. So what you get is a state of an effective lockdown where people are just too scared to go out. And this typically happens when you start getting 5,000 or 10,000 plus deaths per day. This is, classic plague or influenza of the past. Today, we're at about 900 to 1,000 deaths per day, and that's only reported deaths. These numbers are likely to go up in the next 2 weeks, which means, as the doctors have said, the public health system is really, really going to get strained. So when we make these trade-offs between, economy and epidemiology on one side, I think in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be in a situation where really, the public health really has to take a much more emphasis on the public health side than the economy, for the simple reason that if a pandemic runs its course, you will anyway get an economic disaster, because people are simply not going to report to work because they're too sick. People are going to be too scared to work. And this is a classic thing which happened in 1918, where we didn't have a government mandated lockdown, but a people mandated lockdown where nobody really went down. And so we really don't want to get to that situation. And that's why I think, I agree with everyone out here who are saying that we really have to make this now a critical. The next 2 weeks are very, very, very important in what happens going forward. We should try and make this curve peak in this month itself and not go on till June, because at the rate it's going, we're going to go from 900 deaths to 10,000 deaths. That is kind of, if our health system is creaking now, then we reach a state where basically the government is just going to give up and say civil society, please step in, build your own crematoriums and stuff like that. So we are at a very critical juncture, and you're absolutely right that we really have to stop immediately all these mass congregations. The IPL stopped the mass congregations. I'm based in Ahmedabad, where the situation is really bad. I remember an IPL match with 30,000 people in the stadium, which was completely stupid. But they got the logic. They stopped, from the fourth IPL, they shut down. I don't see why some of these, religious and political rallies can't shut down now. So definitely a sense of national crisis. But I do appreciate the fact that the trains are running because it's very important for the national psyche. I think if the trains are shut down, it really affects the psychology of migrant workers. And so I think they should be kept running. In fact, double the capacity to kind of ensure that people can get back home. There's also a migration calendar. Every year in June, end May to June, tens of millions of people naturally migrate back because this is the sowing season back home. This year, maybe people will go a bit earlier, but that's fine. I mean, we should not see this as some sort of a crisis, the exodus, because they were anyway going to go back about 40 days later. To that
Yeah.
extent, notice as some sort of a crisis. As long as back where they're going, some facilities are being kept out there as well, and those receiving states now have to kind of ramp up their public health facility. But overall, from what I'm hearing, we did have 1 year to ramp up facilities. The whole idea of the lockdown last year was to buy us 2 months of time to ramp up facilities, and a lot of it did happen. But I think we did slack off between, say, December and February this year, where we thought we'd kind of won. But what past pandemics tells you is that these curves, flag off very, very quickly. Plague, the Bombay Municipal Administration, 1896, patted themselves on the back, saying we've done a great job. Plague, devastated Bombay for 20 additional years after that. So serious pandemics don't go off in a few weeks. They are here for a while, and one really has to keep your guard, your guard.
Well, I do want to get to, how do we learn to live with the pandemic, which is something that some people are suggesting. And I think Jalil Parkar also referenced that if the pandemic is here for a long time, you're going to have to find a way to live with it. But before that, Dr. Giladi and Namrata must come in. Dr. Giladi, it is being suggested that we should now no longer call it the coronavirus, We should call it the coronaviruses, because the mutations are almost making it like a different virus. And children, for example, are being almost fatally impacted this time. And when I say children, I don't mean younger people, I mean 5-year-olds, babies are coming in with pneumonic problems. And one doctor that I met said because there's not enough oxygen, uh, the line of treatment is changing. And because the line of treatment is changing, there's a good chance that lives that could have been saved will not be saved. And now we're talking possibly about our children. Dr. Giladi.
Basically, what Jalil has started, that Maharashtra is sinking, or other doctors are saying Maharashtra is sinking. There is, in a political tone, it is a Maharashtra to jhaki hai, pura desh abhi baki hai. If you look at what is happening in the rest of the country, on 10th of March, UP had reported only 121 cases, and they had gone to 17,000 yesterday. That is 160 times jump. Bihar had reported only 44 cases on 10th of March, and they have gone to more than 4,000. So, and the election bound states are going by 30 or 40 times up in just 1 month. Now, even if you look at Maharashtra currently, the second wave, which is highly infectious but possibly less lethal, it is having a lot of impact. What is happening is they are infecting, if we talk RO, that one infected person within 8 to 10 days of infectivity infects one person earlier. Now they are infecting two. When they are infecting two, it is not infecting double. It is going to be every 10-day double. That means in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, it will be 8 times up. And that's what is happening. And what cases are being reported, they are tip of the iceberg. There are 10 times more than that number of cases already. I mean, every public health expert will say that. We are caught up between numbers and faces. We have to deal with numbers on one hand, we have to deal with faces on the other hand. And what we need to look at is, sometimes guidelines come from people who are sitting in ivory towers. They have made a guideline of how to dispose of dead body, and the dispose of dead body was in a thin, thick, impervious bag. Do not take home. Do not take directly from here. And I made a slogan that "Jalana ho ya dafnana, insaniyat ko mat bhulana." A lot of people, they've forgotten humanity in that. And now thereafter they say that dead body cannot spread the virus, but people don't know. So before making any kind of guideline, they should have been very sensitive of what is going to happen. A lot of times we blame youth. Youth is a conduit between society and family. Now, if you are blaming youth, why you are not making a youth-centric policy? Why we won the war against HIV? Because the policies were youth-centric. So if you have to make a youth-centric policy, all the young people who are breadwinners of the family, who are conduit in society and family, they should be first vaccinated. Even as a doctor, I would feel that they should have been vaccinated first than us. But it is not so, and we are just keep on blaming young people. There is a derailment of policy. We are looking at election commissioner. He is responsible for good election mode. So everybody is following social distancing. What about electioneering? There is no social distancing there. So we have two rules: one for us and one for some class of people. And so long as we don't have same rules applied everywhere, there will be problem of oxygen. There will be problem of tocilizumab. Medical community, doctors community is the most docile and disciplined community. Even being doctors, we cannot reserve 1% bed in any hospital where we are working. But as a politician, they can get bed everywhere. They have seat available in train, in parliament quota, this quota, we have no quota. And basically, despite that, we are trying to help out people. Now, in current scenario, what can be done? They said remdesivir can be given only for people who are admitted. We can make a daycare remdesivir clinic, where people will come in hospital, within 2 hours they receive remdesivir, go back. So same bed can churn out 10 times more number of people. So we need to have some kind of logistical reanalysis involving doctors on the front line and how they can manage in a given circumstances. Even oxygen shortage, etc. All these things can be worked out. Fortunately, situation is much better than last year, because last year even doctors community, medical community, they were put on duty for 8-10 days, then 8-10 days quarantine, again 10 days duty. Today there is no quarantine because most of the doctors are either infected or vaccinated. So doctors are working round the clock without quarantine, and possibly we can overcome, because we are looking at possibility of having a peak within a 2 or 3 weeks time. But when a peak is happening, a lot of more people will be dying, a lot of more people will be critical, and we will be helpless because we cannot offer neither bed nor medicines.
And Dr. Giladi, in that again emotional and angry outburst was such a good idea of a day remdesivir center. because everybody does not need a hospital bed. You can seek medical intervention in OPD, and we need clearer communication, and we are not getting that communication from anywhere. It's basically left, to individual programs, individual doctors. Namrata, as a resident of the city, Mumbai, your heart must be sinking right now, listening to the doctors, looking at the reports coming out. I don't even know on what basis we can offer hope this time, but at least we should be able to offer common sense.
Barkha, I completely agree with you. I completely concur with you when you call this a national crisis, and we especially see it in Maharashtra because we have ramped up testing for the last couple of months greatly. We have ramped up our treatment. The state government has been very proactive in providing support. We're extra beds, we're controlling oxygen, we're building jumbo centers. I think the state government has just commissioned 3 more jumbo centers with about 2,000 patients each. So I would like to commend the Thackeray government, the MPA government on the disaster management, so to speak. But the crisis as it is a very unusual and a new monster. We thought we dealt with it last year. We had 3 months and a bit of a lockdown, of a very severe lockdown, and we slowly opened it up. We controlled it as much as we could, but I cannot take away from the fact that this pandemic has seen a massive surge because it is a failing of the central government, especially. Everything is seen as political capital. We're talking about the religious yatras that have been taking place both at Vaishno Devi as well as the Kumbh Mela, the election rallies. Mamata Banerjee has been, this prick in the BJP's eye ever since they came in. She's been the strongest opposition that the central government has had.
Yeah, but the rallies, Namrata, the rallies are being held by all parties. In the rallies, they're all guilty.
Of course they are. Of course, especially in Bengal they are. But I just think if the center and the state governments worked in tandem with each other, we would have a better handle on the situation.
Okay, let me just play out. I think Chinmay made some good points about how thankfully the trains are running, and one of the things is that we can focus a little bit more on the medical emergency this time. Because public transport has not been shut. In 2020, we were the only country in the world that shut down our public transport. But what was instructive to me was when I met these workers, the sense of emotional loneliness that an ordinary citizen is feeling today. I know doctors are feeling it, and we could hear it in Jalil Parkar's pain. But even among poorer citizens, one man said to me, कि हम अकेले पड़ चुके हैं. So let me just play out to you what these workers said to me on the ground as they set out to take trains home. It is an acute sense of deja vu, yesterday once more, here at the Lokmanya terminus in the heart of Mumbai. It's not like last year when migrant workers were walking, but once again the reverse migration has started. You can see all here behind me, there are men, mostly men still leaving, who are with their bags, their belongings, and new restrictions have been announced in Maharashtra, of course, and many of these men who work as daily wagers in the city say that they need to go back again. We are going to talk to many of them who are sitting here waiting somehow to organize a train for themselves. Those are the small mercies, at least they're not on the highways and walking, and you can see here a universe of their belongings, all of the bags that are packed up. And I'm going to try and talk to some of them here. भाई साहब, आपका नाम?
मिस्टर राम केवल राजभर।
कहाँ, कौन से प्रदेश से हैं?
यूपी महाराजगंज।
अच्छा, तो आप लोग यहाँ पे क्यों छोड़ के जा रहे हैं?
लॉकडाउन की वजह से हम लोग जाना चाहते हैं।
पर इस बारी इतना कठोर लॉकडाउन नहीं हुआ है, और सरकार ये भी कह रही है कि फैक्ट्रियाँ खुली रहेंगी और 30 तारीख तक लिफ्ट भी हो सकता है, तो आप लोग क्यों छोड़ के जा रहे हैं?
मैडम, पिछले साल हम लोग बहुत झेल चुके हैं, इसके डर की वजह से हम लोग भागना चाहते हैं, किसी तरह से घर पे जाके सुरक्षित रहेंगे। और अभी सरकार की बात जो हम लोग सुनते हैं, पिछले साल 1 दिन के लिए लॉकडाउन किया गया था, लेकिन 3 महीने झेलना पड़ा हम लोगों को, इसके डर से भागना चाहते हैं।
तो पिछले साल का जो एक्सपीरियंस है अभी भी बहुत लोगों के लिए रॉ है, कोई मानता नहीं है कि हो सकता है कि 2 हफ्ते में सब चीज़ें ठीक हो जाए। भाई साहब, आप यहाँ क्या काम करते थे?
कारपेंटर का।
तो दिहाड़ी का काम, दिहाड़ी की तनख्वाह थी?
हाँ।
तो आपको ये नहीं लगता कि थोड़े दिन रुक जाओ, देख लो क्या होगा?
अभी मैडम हम लोगों को कौन सा विश्वास रखा जाए, या कौन विश्वास हम लोगों को दिलाने वाला कोई भी नहीं है कि जो है जिसके बात पर हम लोग यकीन करके रहें और हम लोगों का साथ दे सके वो लास्ट तक।
आप में से किसी का टेस्टिंग हुआ?
सारे लोगों का टेस्टिंग हुआ है, हम लोग
नेगेटिव है,
नेगेटिव आया,
फिर भी जा रहे हो?
फिर भी जा रहे हैं।
आपको लगता है आप अकेले पड़ गए यहाँ शहर में?
नहीं, अभी हम लोग जो है अकेले नहीं महसूस कर रहे हैं, लेकिन फिर भी अकेले तो हैं।
हाँ, कोई लगता नहीं साथ में खड़ा है।
अभी हम लोगों को दिशा निर्देश देने वाला कौन है?
हमारे को दिशा देने वाला कौन है, ये हमसे पूछते हैं सवाल। आप में से और कौन लोग घर जाने की इच्छा में हैं? बताओ, अपना नाम बताओ।
अब्दुल सलाम।
अब्दुल भाई, क्या काम करते हैं यहाँ?
हम गैरिया काम करते हैं।
क्यों जा रहे हो?
काम नहीं चल रहा इसलिए जा रहे हैं गाँव।
यहाँ काम नहीं मिल रहा?
काम तो मिल रहा है,
फिर
मगर उतना काम नहीं चल रहा है, इसलिए गांव जा रहे हैं।
आपको लगता नहीं कि कुछ दिन इंतजार किया जाए?
इंतजार किया क्या जाए, पहली दफ़ा तो हम तो इंतजार करके तो भूख चुके हैं, कितने जन पैदल गए हुए हैं, और फिर से जाने का यही प्लान है, इसीलिए तो टिकट भी उस तरफ मिला, ब्लैक मिल रहा है। वो
टिकट ब्लैक में मिल रहा है?
मिल रहा है।
टिकट कितने का मिल रहा है?
मिल रहा है 1350 का है, तो मगर हम 3 जने 6000 लिए।
6000 लिए?
हाँ।
तो पैसा कहाँ से आया?
पैसा कहाँ से आया, हम लोग काम करते तब तो पैसा आया।
तो आपको ब्लैक में टिकट लेना पड़ रहा है?
ब्लैक में लिया था, फिर भी नहीं जाने दे रहे हैं। बोल
क्यों?
क्योंकि ये वेटिंग टिकट है, नहीं जाने देंगे।
तो आप ये देखिए, पिछले साल आप सबको मालूम है हम लोग कैसे माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स के साथ चले। हमने उनको फॉलो किया, हम हाईवेज़ पे उनके साथ चले, और उस समय हमें बोला गया कि जो ट्रेन का सफ़र है उसका खर्चा मज़दूरों को खुद नहीं देना पड़ेगा, लेकिन उस समय भी मज़दूरों को खुद देना पड़ा। और आज हमें ये वर्कर्स बता रहे हैं कि ये पैसे ब्लैक में इनको देना पड़ रहा है घर जाने के लिए। मैं पूछना चाहती हूँ, आप में से ऐसे भी कोई लोग हैं जिनको पिछली साल पैदल जाना पड़ा या मुश्किल हुई? पहले भी गए थे आप घर?
पैदल नहीं गए थे।
पिछले साल आप गए थे घर अब्दुल भाई?
अब्दुल मैं तो गया था पैदल नहीं गए थे।
हाँ।
गया था बस से।
तो इस साल और पिछले साल में कोई अंतर लग रहा है कि कुछ बेहतर है सिचुएशन?
बेहतर तो नहीं लग रहा है, आगे चल के जाने कोई बेहतर बने।
अच्छा, बेहतर आपकी ज़िंदगी में आपके लिए इस साल और पिछले साल में कोई फ़र्क
नहीं है।
सबसे बड़ी मुश्किल कठिनाई क्या हो रही है भाई साहब, बताओ?
हमें कठिनाई हो रही है कि काम नहीं मिल रहा, तो इसलिए घर जाना पड़ रहा। लॉकडाउन।
क्या काम करते हैं आप?
स्विच का काम करता हूँ।
और काम नहीं मिल रहा है?
काम नहीं मिल रहा, इसीलिए घर जाना पड़ रहा। कल से लॉकडाउन पता लग रहा, लग जाएगा।
तो आप सब ने ब्लैक में टिकट लेने पड़ी आप सबको? कितना, मतलब कितना ज़्यादा महंगा टिकट लेना पड़ा?
हम लोगों ने 3 टिकट लिया है 4500 रुपये का।
तो आप देखिए ये हाल कि एज इफ देयर लाइव्स वर नॉट डिफ़िकल्ट इनफ। आप घर जाने के लिए टिकट नहीं मिल रही है तो ब्लैक में मिल रही है, ब्लैक में मिल रही है तो फिर भी वेटिंग पीरियड है। और ये जो एक इमेज है, दिस इज़ बिकम द अबाइडिंग इमेज ऑफ our year's battle with corona. There's COVID on the one hand, but there is the humanitarian crisis and the reverse migration, lives packed up in bags, looking out at acute uncertainty. So I just was struck by the worker who said, "हमें दिशा देने वाला कोई नहीं है." And I think everybody, citizens want direction. You know, we want to be led. We want some sense of being told what to do, what not to do. I want to go back to the panel. Madhavan, I can see you wanting to come in. Madhavan, go ahead.
Just a couple of points, Barkha. One is that Chaitanya made a nice point about, civil society coming in. I think...
Yeah. Chinmay, not Chaitanya, Chinmay, yeah.
Chinmay, sorry. Chinmay, yeah. I'm sorry to get the name wrong. I think it's a valid point, and it's important to get the civil society in, because we need what I call parallel governance. Because even if, assuming the government was very efficient, even assuming there was no politicization, both of my assumptions are evidently wrong, but let's go for a best case optimistic scenario. We still need civil society intervention, and we need guidelines and a framework so that people can work positively without any hesitancy. And for that, one example, for instance, the Delhi government, you were talking about Disha, the direction. I'm not speaking up for Arvind Kejriwal, but some of the measures taken in Delhi have been quite systematic, as close to an expert view as possible in the interstate scheme of things. And for instance, the wedding hall right next to the Jayaprakash Hospital, Loknayak Jayaprakash Narayan Hospital, has been converted into a COVID ward. We had Lilavati Hospital converting a lift lobby into a ward, and we were seeing criticism. We've had memories of the partition of 1947 when refugee camps were set up in schools and even in tents. So let us draw from our public memory on how we handled such a humanitarian crisis in the past, at least for purposes of logistics. Healthcare workers will have their own issues, and let the experts take care of that. While we do that, can we as civil society organizations mobilize what is called the uh, surroundings of what is to
Yeah.
be handled by public health workers? That
But
is,
I think we need a cohesion, right? We can't have the Shiv Sena and the BJP fighting with each other. We can't have this tutu meme between right wing and left wing. Right? Really, who gives a damn right now? People care about living. People care about reclaiming their lives, reclaiming this country. Chinmay, quickly before I go back to the doctors, and I do want to go back to them. I want Chinmay, Sandip, and Namrata to come in. I think you make the good point that what we've done right is to not shut down public transport. We need to also talk about the things that we've done right. We are not doing a drastic national lockdown. Dr. Parkar and Dr. Giladi are almost indicating that if the pandemic isn't going away anytime soon, we've got to develop mechanisms to live with it the best we can. Uh, your thoughts when you heard the workers and the poor, the economy, is all that going to have to wait? Because the problem is that sometimes a lot of people feel that the poverty will kill them before the illness will, and that creates a different kind of panic.
Yeah, absolutely, Barkha. I mean, I'm trained as an economist, and I'd be the last person to say that, I would be the first one to say that the economy has to save. But there's a tipping point. And as I said, the minute you go past 1,000 deaths, you are in a state of an economic disaster per se, simply because nobody's going to go out to work. And I fear that we are moving into that territory. And that's why we have to be very, very careful, because there are hard trade-offs. There are hard, public policy decisions to be made. But in February, yes, the economy and the death count was okay. But in the situation we find in today is very, very alarming. And trust me, in 2 weeks' time, if these cases still go up, you don't need to wait for a national lockdown. People are simply going to stop going out of just general fear. So we are in that very, very dangerous, territory of the pandemic going completely out of hand. And it's happened, unfortunately, in the past as well. So we really need to, buck up on the public health front more, I would say, than the economic front. At this particular juncture, I think, as people have pointed out, this is not going to end even in a few weeks. It's going to play out. And so we have to be smart about, okay, when are we emphasizing more on the economy and when more out here? But right now, I think the economy has to take a slight backseat.
1 point.
Madhavan, one sentence and then
one small point, Barkha. Let us look at it positively. Public health is not an alternative to economics. It is the new economics. Public health and climate change spending, every penny spent is positive spending looking at the long run. I can bring in my friends from Wall Street who will design 50-year bonds for you with suitable convertibility. We can do fantastic financial engineering. I'm sure Chinmay will join in. If we bring in principles of management, financial engineering, technology together, there's a lot. What we need to do is to not make the current set of economic measures look bad because of this. Let's go back just a mere 30, 40 years ago. When computers were coming in, people were panicking, saying that, people lose their jobs. Now, typists losing their jobs was an issue 40 years ago. Bank clerks losing their job was an issue 40 years ago. So, but we came through it all with ushering in new technology by ushering in a new paradigm of economics. So, public health is growth. Today, Dr. Reddy's and Bharat Biotech are hot companies which we hadn't even heard of. So, we have to spend positively in public health and create
and I
long-term
don't and I
issues.
don't and I don't disagree with you, but we're in a phase of needing to survive these 2 weeks. We are literally at an existential tipping point. I don't know if the doctors will agree with me, but this is my reading on the ground. Sandip, please come in. Sandip, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So as Chintan was saying that, we need to now forget about the economics. This 11.5% growth, etc., can wait. Whenever it has to happen, will happen. Whatever we have to do to keep people alive, there's people afloat, we need to do that. I don't want to get into this politics about center versus states, etc. Okay, that's, I think we should, whether it's Mamata Banerjee or Uddhav Thackeray, those are separate. But the learning I have from Maharashtra is Maharashtra was one state which had some degree of warning because it was having high level of cases for now several weeks. I'm not too sure how much Maharashtra really ramped up the preparations for a peak. They probably thought it will go away. I think other states should not make the same mistake if they're not having so many cases today. I live in South India. Thankfully, the cases are lower, but I think all states have to be prepared for the worst and they have to start ramping up all these facilities. I think that is very, very critical at this point. And the last point on railways, I think railways last year was very maligned. The way they ramped up the Shramik specials, etc., was remarkable. But so forgetting that this year, I think again they were not prepared. So today, while the services are on, you're depending on the regular services. They will also have to very quickly ramp up for special trains, etc., running. They need to do that. But more importantly, Barkha, what we were discussing the other day, at the receiving end, I think the problem this time is going to be much worse. You will not be able to just control people at the stations. People will come in from various degrees. So the rural surge has to be contained. And for that, there needs to be national planning, experts, economics. So we leave it to Madhavan and other experts who really fix it later on.
Namrata, before I close with the doctors, please go ahead with your
Yes,
thoughts.
very briefly, I'm just going to reiterate that, we are an expert panel. You have a wonderful and a very erudite panel, but what's really going to make a difference to the common man, really going to make a difference to the migrants you've met who are taking the train or hopefully not going to be walking home, is really a national integration of political parties. This is a larger than life crisis. It's a massive surge that we're seeing in India, and it's not going to work unless parties come together and deal with it completely together. Yesterday, we had the Chief Minister of Maharashtra make a very impassioned and a very humble and a very moving speech announcing the lockdown and taking measures where he very humbly spoke, offered explanations, giving free Shiv Bhojan, giving 1,500 rupees to registered laborers, hawkers, auto drivers. The opposition leader today held a press conference in Nagpur, talking of corruption and all of that. I mean, these things, if everything is political capital, then the common man has been failed.
Fair. Just one point. There are also chief ministers who are not even attending prime minister's meetings, called on COVID. I totally agree with you. So it has to happen across the board.
Yeah, it does. It does. But I want to, before I come to the doctors, because Dr. Parkar made such a important point in the beginning about that video out of Veeravati Hospital, which showed doctors in the, I beg your pardon, patients in the lobby and how they were criticized for it. This is what I saw, Dr. Parkar, happening at a hospital in Vasai, Nalasopara, 1 hour from Mumbai, when the oxygen ran out. Doctors were attacked in this fashion, right? This is what's actually happening. You're seeing a milder version of this, but basically there was complete chaos inside the hospital, and we actually had to, while we were there, we saw a police bandobast having to be arranged outside the hospital as distraught relatives stormed into the hospital. And at one point there was hatapai, and actually somebody reached out and hit a doctor. And all of this is, this kind of tamasha is also unfolding. And so you're really looking at potential civil unrest. This is, I'm not exaggerating. You have to be mindful at this point of civil unrest, of health workers not coming under target. These are extremely serious things that are happening. Dr. Giladi, last thoughts? And then Dr. Parkar.
Yeah, basically what we need to convince people, because some of the migrants are saying, "Hum kis pe bharosa kare?" You believe in doctors. No doctor will kill you. No doctor will neglect you. In whatever situation you come, we will try to help you. So don't attack doctors, number one. Number two, people should understand like a flight philosophy. Flight takes minimum 5 minutes or 7 minutes to take off. But while landing, it takes half an hour or 20 minutes. So when the epidemic is going up, it may be stable for some time, but it will take longer time to come down. And lastly, we should vaccinate people as early as possible, because the vaccine's life is only 8 to 10 months. 3 months are already over. If we do not complete vaccination in 5 months, we'll have second round of vaccination again. third round of vaccination again. So we'll see the waves again and again. So we need to create this kind of herd immunity, whether through infection, whatever people are infected, and through vaccination as early as possible. And lastly, we should also emphasize on antibody testing. Everywhere you have people are talking about antigen test or RT-PCR test. Those who are infected, there is no point in doing their RT-PCR test. Those who are infected in the past 15 days before any time, their antibody test will come positive. Maharashtra government is testing all those people coming from 5 different states, calling them hot states. 20 lakh people were tested in last 3 months. Only 17,000 people were found positive, 0.7% ratio. Maharashtra itself is 15% positivity ratio. So if you do antibody test, those which are infected already, antibody positive, they can be allowed. So we need to have this kind of practical measures, and let us hope things will be better in next 2 or 3 weeks. Thank you.
Dr. Parkar, the last word to you. I think for what I'm hearing from both of you doctors is, since the pandemic isn't going away, you have to find imaginative, creative, humane ways to live with it. As Ishwar Gilada said, day OPDs for remdesivir, perhaps a more antibody tests to see who's infected, who could maybe be allowed a greater degree of freedom of mobility and movement and economic activity. Would you say that we've got to live with this because it isn't going away? And if that's the case, how do we live with it? What do we do?
Barkha, see, anywhere around the world, the health ministry never generates an income. So it is for each individual country's government to decide, the federal government, the central government, the local government, whatever, as to how much they should invest in the health sector. And right now, I think it's an eye-opener, and I think they must do this, because if the population is healthy, then the economy is healthy. One should realize that. That's number one. Number two, somebody just said that, this migrant crisis is just a temporary crisis. All that I would like to say is, have you ever been compelled or pushed to the wall where you have walked for miles with children in your arms and your luggage or baggage on your shoulders or on your head for miles together? Do you call that a temporary crisis? Come on, one has to be humane. अगर तुम हमदर्दी नहीं कर सकते तो कम से कम बेदर्दी तो ना करो. Where have we reached? Have we lost our conscience? Have we lost our humanity that we talk about all this? Have you ever tried to walk from Bandra till Nariman Point with a baggage on your head or on your shoulders and your children not having slippers? What are we talking about? Do you call this a temporary crisis? We should be ashamed of all this. We are just sitting and talking. Let's do something. Just stop all this nonsense. Enough is enough.
What should we do, sir? What should we do? What should we do? What should we be doing?
So let's see to it that
we agree with you, sir. Tell us what we should do. Guide us. What should we do?
What should we do? We should see to it that the health services reach each and everyone at whatever cost. It doesn't matter. At whatever cost. Maybe as it is, the economy is in shambles, but yet we have to do if we want to save lives. We are all Indian citizens. We all must remember that.
Immediately, sir, specifically one or two things that you would advise the government to do urgently.
Urgently, as I said, the vaccination should be up to its hill. Everybody should be vaccinated. Everybody should at least get the basic treatment. I can understand if there are certain treatments that cannot reach, but the basic treatment, what is wrong? Why can't we give oxygen to the people? At least give oxygen. I can understand if tocilizumab is not available, चलो हम रेमडेसिविर से काम चलाएंगे, स्टीरॉइड से काम चलाएंगे, लेकिन कम से कम कोशिश तो करो. कोशिश इतनी होनी चाहिए कि हर चीज हर जगह पे पहुंचनी चाहिए. यहाँ तो पहुंच ही नहीं रही है। क्रिमेशन के लिए अगर 4 दिन लग रहे हैं, if you are requiring 4 days to cremate, God bless us. What more do you want? Don't you think it is a tsunami, as somebody said? Yeah, it is worse than a tsunami. It is worse than World War II. World War II में तो यहाँ वहाँ से बॉम्ब गिर के लोग मरे ना, हमने तो देखा नहीं है. The elder citizens must have seen. But this is worse than that. You are seeing people begging of you before they die. Have you ever seen a patient on BiPAP or on a ventilator awake and begging of you, save my life, save my life? Have you ever seen that? Please come and see. Only then you will understand. Just now, while I'm talking to you, I'm getting phone calls after phone calls. मेरी बहन को बेड नहीं मिल रहा है, मेरे माँ को बेड नहीं मिल रहा है, मेरे किसको बेड नहीं मिल रहा है. करे तो क्या करें? किस किस को जवाब दें? It's unbelievable. I cannot give beds to my own colleagues in the hospital, my own nursing staff, my telephone operators, my RMOs. They themselves don't get a bed. We are so scared, and nobody understands this because nobody wants to come and see. Everybody wants to sit and talk big. अरे भाई मेहरबानी करो. I am begging of you all. अगर हमदर्दी नहीं कर सकते, इंसानियत नहीं है, तो कम से कम क्या कहते हैं उसको? I've lost it. बेदर्दी न करो, कम से कम वो तो न करो. कुछ नहीं करते तो चुप बैठो.
I can only again.
It's a shame on humanity.
It's very difficult to say anything after I hear you speak.
Responsible for that.
Yeah.
Let everybody, right from the lower middle class to the upper middle class to the rich, let them pay more. What wrong do you lose? 250 का वैक्सीनेशन है, 500 दिए तो क्या हो गया? एक को तो फ्री में मिलेगा. 1000 दिए तो क्या हो गया? 4 को फ्री में मिलेगा. क्या गलती है? अगर वो लोग गरीब हैं तो उनकी गलती क्या है? मुझे ये बताओ. अगर ये समझ में नहीं आता तो जीने लायक ही नहीं है. डॉक्टर्स ऑलवेज आर एट द रिसीविंग एंड. डॉक्टर ये ने अच्छा हुआ तो भगवान ने किया, बुरा हुआ तो डॉक्टर ने किया. डॉक्टर ने ये नहीं किया, डॉक्टर ने वो नहीं किया. I'm ashamed and I'm appalled and I have nothing more to say.
And I usually I'm never short of words, but every time I hear Jalil Parkar speak, I am not able to speak for one moment after that. So if someone wants to help me here and say something, because I'm not cogent for maybe the first time in 25 years.
I have something very radically counterintuitive to say. Let's not go on for a very simple reason. As a communicator, I believe that when the right things are being said, it is important to make them brief, terse, and reachable to a large section of the people. I think all I want is Dr. Parker's words to be edited properly. We have to step back from our own mouth and do our video editing and our storytelling. Editing is an art. We have to just make the words of doctors, Ishwar and Dr. Jalil, go as far as possible. Let them do the talking, because we are living in times of fake news and rumors and political point scoring. We just have to let the experts voice their truly a mix of expertise and emotion, so that the right people buy into the huge weight of moral authority that they seem to be carrying, and just listen to them. Let civil society organizations step in, and let there be more creativity, like I recalled during the partition or those times. Let's draw from our memory to organize measures. We can call it a Janata curfew, we can call it a soft lockdown, we can call it a voluntary lockdown or whatever. But instead of stumbling into herd immunity, let us look at a systematic approach, so that as much as possible there is a minimum collateral damage in our fight against this invisible monster. That's all I can say now.
Yeah, and I think you're right. We need to let the words of Dr. Parkar and Dr. Giladi sink in. They are the most important words we'll hear today, and I really have nothing gratuitous to add. Dr. Parkar, you're wanting to add something? Go ahead, sir.
Yes, even when a calf of an elephant dies, the elephant stands by for hours together, thinking कि ये बच जाएगा, thinking कि ये जिंदा होगा. अगर वो लोग कर सकते हैं तो हम क्यों नहीं कर सकते? Why not we?
I think we have touched the heart of the matter in this program a lot. Let's leave the heads to the experts to think about. But I think it's as humanity, as a nation, we need to, apply our hearts. And I think that's the best part of this show, which we have attended. And I agree with Madhavan. We need to get that message across. Thank you very much, Barkha, for having us over.
Thank you. I think Dr. Parker's want to still say something. Yes, I just want to close, sir, but yeah, I'll give you 10 seconds more. Yeah.
Barkha, if people want to bash up doctors, if the people want to bash up paramedics, please do that, provided you are able to save lives.
Yeah.
अगर वो नहीं कर सकते तो हिम्मत नहीं होनी चाहिए तुम्हारे में हाथ उठाने की.
बिल्कुल सही. Bilkul sahi, sir, and we will leave it with those sobering thoughts. I think we have nothing more to add. You have humbled us, sobered us, shamed us, given us pause, and I really have nothing more to say except thank you and God bless you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.